Thank you for tuning into the premiere of NightKab. Before we begin tonight's terrifying tale, allow me to introduce the show. NightKab is a collection of stories from around the world, stories of the unexplainable, specters and visitors, apparitions and obscurities. The stories brought to you are intended for long listening. Tuning in during a nighttime drive or perhaps a late evening stroll is strongly encouraged. I have one small disclaimer. The stories submitted to me aren't always provided by the most wholesome sorts. I try to verify and clarify, but those I talk to have a habit of going dark. So occasionally I must add my own flourishes to the tales. But I assure you, the truth of the tale will remain intact. Tonight's tale is provided by a rather defensive individual, Victor Redacted. During my communications with him, I found him to be a rather repulsive man, yet his story did intrigue me. He seeks your belief, and he seeks relief from the entity that has bound him, but perhaps he is just where he belongs. I present to you Starter Home, read by voice actor Brandon Abler.
I'm out of friends and out of ideas. The very few who see me refuse to believe me. So in a plea of desperation, I send this to you and beg you for your help, or at the very least, for your open mind. 10 years ago, when I was just 14, a boy named Bruce moved into my neighborhood all the way from Peru. I'd never met anyone from that country before, and neither had Tony or Carson, my closest friends. We all first met at the neighborhood bus stop, a small patch of grass with a stop sign planted firmly in the middle. Bruce stood out immediately. Peruvian boy in the middle of suburban Virginia, a fat kid with a hideous raised mole on his left cheek. The growth had a single long, thick hair that was just begging to be plucked out. We asked him about Peru. Bruce told us his family used to have a small farm where they raised alpacas. Let me pause to remind you, I was 14, as were Carson and Tony. And now as an adult, I think any other reasonable person would agree that children are children. Sometimes mean in a stupid way. Boys will be boys, I believe this. So in hindsight, this is all silly and regretful, but not worth any suffering, right? The source of our pranks and jokes was not of some vicious hate, but of a TV movie we saw, where alpacas, the animals Bruce was so familiar with, would make funny faces and spit all day. So, when he mentioned alpacas, I inhaled and conjured some mucus, like many kids would, and I spat. As I recall, I did not mean for the green glob to land on his white sneakers, but it did. Carson and Tony found it funny. They laughed. Bruce did nothing. Said nothing. The bus often ran late, and a bored child is a cruel child, so we spat some more, not just at Bruce, at least not at first. We spat at the stop sign, at each other, at nothing, until I had a thought, an intrusive thought from a protrusive mole. $20 to whoever can hit the target. I loudly proclaimed the bet, and the three of us chased Bruce around, trying to be the first to hit that hideous mole. By the time the bus arrived, Bruce's clothes were well marked by our immature behavior. Tony had won the $20. When Bruce boarded the bus, many of the kids screamed, "Ew!" We told them about our game, and more than a few wanted to join in. Now, I know that sounds bad. I agree. As a grown man, I would never do that. But remember, we were just kids at the time. And I swear it just felt like a joke. Like we were hazing the new guy, but did not mean anything cruel by it. It honestly felt friendly from my perspective. The joke got out of hand, I admit that. But despite what some would want, I am not going to sit here and feel bad about something I did as a child. Over the next few months, the spitting evolved into banter, back and forth, mind you, and before long, the four of us had a few light scraps break out. Bruce did not know how to take a joke. After a while, Bruce would look panicked when he saw me approaching the bus stop. An overreaction, my friends. We did not mean him any harm. Bruce started to skip school. Teachers noticed and were asking questions. He was making it into a big deal, and I did not want my father getting mad at me. More than that, I really did feel bad about the whole thing. Tony and Carson came with me to Bruce's house, a quaint 3-bedroom home with a large concrete porch with pale stone steps. We were going there to straighten Bruce out, make sure there was no trouble for any of us. I swear by this next part, we did not go to Bruce's house to hurt him. But when he answered the door and saw the 3 of us there, the kid snapped. He came out of his house swinging his fists, screaming at us. When he refused to stop, we tried to grab him, but wound up having to defend ourselves. Much of this is a blur, but by some mistake or accident or fluke, Bruce was knocked over and fell down those stone porch steps. In his tumble, he hit the back of his head. He started to twitch violently. That I remember clearly. Thick white foam coming out of his mouth. His eyes open but lost as his body danced on the walkway, each convulsion smashing his head, his limbs on the pavement. Tony and I panicked. We were begging Bruce to stop, to get up, but he wouldn't respond. Carson, he just sat down on the porch and looked at the ground, trying to pretend it wasn't happening. As Bruce continued shaking, I put my hands on his shoulders and, to this day, I don't know why, but I smiled at him, and I told him politely to stop, but he wouldn't. A knot formed in my stomach, and I was afraid that this mistake was going to ruin my entire life. We went into Bruce's house to get a phone and call my father. I was panicked, but managed to explain everything to him. Father came over right away. By the time he arrived, Bruce had stopped shaking but was now unconscious, and we didn't know if that was good or bad. Father looked around, asked several questions, and advised us to stay calm and stay put while he called an ambulance. While we were waiting, Bruce, still unconscious, began making this terrible, guttural snoring sound every time he breathed. It was a loud, ugly sound, like a garbage disposal, slow and stuck. By the time the ambulance arrived, not much could be done. Bruce just would not wake up. Paramedics loaded him into the back, and in a bit of unfortunate timing, Bruce's father came home to the sight of us 3 boys, my father, the paramedics, and even the police all outside of his house. It was a circus. Bruce's dad was screaming, but not in English. They transported Bruce to the hospital while the police stayed back. My mind blurs together here, but eventually the officers gathered our statements while Father stood by. Bruce's dad wanted to press charges against me and my friends, on freaking kids. We all swore that Bruce had come out of the house and just started attacking us, and that we had only defended ourselves. We weren't trying to hurt him. Bruce just had bad luck. The officers were confused by our story. Admittedly, it was complicated. Father spoke to Bruce's dad privately. He recognized this was a terrible tragedy and saw how Bruce's dad was having difficulty communicating his position to the police. Father is an industrious man, but also charitable. He went to Bruce's dad and generously offered him well above the asking price for their house. Said the money would be enough for their son's treatment and that they could relocate and forget all about the accident. A few weeks passed and things cooled off. The police were satisfied with their report and ruled it a tragic accident, and Bruce's dad took the money. Still, Father was rightfully pissed at me. He gave me a lecture that went on all afternoon, refusing to go soft on me, but it was done. It meant my friends could finally breathe. Time passed, and just last year I got married to my beautiful wife, Skylar. And get this, Father, who'd been renting out Bruce's old house to many families over the years, gave it to us as a starter home. It wasn't much, just a humble little place, but good enough for a modest start. I had a little housewarming party for me and the missus. Wouldn't you know, Tony and Carson still lived in the area, so they came by. We were having a good time, a real good time, beers all around. It was midnight when we heard a knock at the door. At the time, I thought our loud music had summoned a neighbor and was bummed out at some loser ruining our good time. When I opened the door, there was just a lone older man, Hispanic, Latino, possibly Central American-looking man, and he was immediately furious with me, screaming, not even in English, and waving his fists. I was not in the mood to receive this unpleasantness. But, before I could yell back, I noticed this old man had a kid with him, a young teenage boy. He walked closer to the porch light, looking lost at first, and there I could see him clearly. A chubby kid with a large mole planted clearly on his face. I signaled the guys over and they got a look at the kid too. Tony and Carson both agreed he looked exactly like him. He looked exactly like Bruce. Tony and I started to laugh, but Carson, the whole thing made him really uncomfortable. He quickly went back inside the house. Anyway, Tony, he started making loogie sounds. Just as a joke, he wouldn't have done that to the kid. But the dad, the dad did not appreciate that. He tried to pass us and get into the house, and that I could not excuse, and I threw my beer bottle at his feet, the glass shards littering all around him. This little old guy, he started to throw his hands up, looking real angry, looking like he was asking for a fight. All the noise finally attracted Skylar, and she just asked me to end things civilly as if I had started the commotion. I told the guy, "Hey, you were coming at me, trying to come into my property in front of my wife. You know what that means I could do?" He must have understood that. He looked at us all for a moment before finally trailing off into the night with his tail between his legs, saying something in Spanish to his Bruce look-alike son. That was where the weirdness started, the unexplainable stuff you're looking for. When the kid went to walk after his presumed father, he froze up on the bottom step of the porch. He was just standing there in the dark, not saying a word. At first, I thought he was messing with me, so I flicked the porch lights on and off and told him, "Time to go home, kid." He wouldn't budge, so I tried to communicate on his terms, and I hollered, "Hola, Holmes? You there, Jefe?" Still nothing. He stayed there looking at the ground. I didn't want to touch him. I was sure that would make things worse. So I went inside to get the phone and call the cops because I wanted the night done with. But when I went back outside, the Bruce look-alike was gone. That night when we went to bed, Skylar, for the first time ever, was snoring. It took me aback. As she slept, she snored louder and louder, preventing my sleep. As the moon sunk low, so did her snores pitch into a terrible trembling sound. A sound so similar to that guttural snore that Bruce made all those years ago. She laid there making that awful grinding sound deep in her throat, taking in air, but it was like none of it was getting through. I tossed and turned for hours, but she just kept going at it. Eventually, I woke her up and told her she was snoring like a bear. She groggily apologized, said she had a little too much to drink, and we went back to bed. But again, that sound, that ugly breathing. I went without sleep the entire night. Needless to say, the first night in our new home was not what I was hoping for. An ugly reminder of the past, and an ugly sound coming from my wife's pretty face. I know this part is not unexplainable or supernatural, but it was weird. I swear she had never once snored before that night. She would swear to that too, drinking be damned. And for her first snore to sound exactly like Bruce, that bothered me. It still does. The next morning, big bags under my eyes, I went down into the basement and started unpacking the supplies to set up my man cave while Skylar started painting the place. The basement was looking a little too vintage for my taste. Those crinkled popcorn ceilings you used to see, and rectangular shades on the lights. Looking to quickly upgrade the place, I dusted off my St. Pauli girl beer sign, neon still working, got my Ravens flag out and hung it up right next to the flat screen. It was coming along nicely. That's when I heard sounds coming from the top of the stairs. Heavy, thundering footsteps and a loud crash like something falling. "Skylar!" I yelled when I went to take a look. As I approached, the lights went out. I couldn't see anything in the dark, and as I fumbled my way through the boxes, I was tripping in complete darkness, knocking over fragile packages as I walked. As I approached the stairwell in the dark, I felt a wet glob drip down from the ceiling. I wiped it from my face. It was a thick, warm liquid. I tried to fling it off my hands, but it just clung to me. I gagged at the thought of what it could be. Mold? Sewage? Old still water from a faulty pipe? Then I heard scuttling steps at the top of the stairs. Again, I called out, "Skylar!" Because who else could it have been? Suddenly the lights turned back on. Stubby little fingers on the light switch. That boy, Bruce's look-alike, stood at the top of the stairs, just staring down at me. Again, I must reiterate, he looked exactly like Bruce. Even from the basement, I could see that disgusting mole of his. More so, I could see the drool dripping from his fat face. He flicked the lights back off. Again, a wet glob hit my face. The kid silently laughing while he spat down on me. I remember my fists clenching, my heart beating fast. I started yelling at the top of my lungs, cursing that kid. I ran up the steps as quickly as I could. That little punk just smiled at me. He turned the corner before I could get to him, and by the time I got to the foyer, the front door was open, and Bruce was long gone. Once I regained my composure, I went upstairs to find Skylar unpacking some clothing and then scolded her. "Why didn't you lock the door?" She looked annoyed at my question, probably thought I was crazy for yelling so loudly, but I told her that little jerk broke into our house, told her he spat at me, and guess what? She freaking defended him. She said if that's all that comes out of attacking his dad like that, consider yourself lucky. While we were arguing about what to do, I had a thought. Was it a coincidence the kid spat on me? Like how I spat at Bruce all those years ago? I asked myself. How could he know to do that? Because unless the boy knew about that story, what antisocial child would do that to a stranger? To a strange adult? The question bothered me. Later that day, I wound up telling Skylar a little more about the house. I told her how my father acquired it and what happened when I was a kid. And get this, she looked at me like I was some kind of monster, and then asked me if I felt bad about it. I told her, listen, I was a kid. Kids get into arguments with other kids all the time. And boys get into fights. It's what they do. I asked her if she wanted capital punishment for little 14-year-old me, just for roughhousing. Then she asked, does it ever bother you? Just a little? Even if it was an accident, I just think if I ever accidentally did something like that, it would haunt me forever. I shrugged that off quickly, told her she was crazy for even thinking I would. I'm not going to be mad at a child, even if that child is me. Maybe especially because that child was me. Our argument was a terrible start to our Saturday. We unpacked the rest of the day in silence. It wasn't until late evening when we were visited again. I was working on unpacking boxes in the family room, only to be stopped by the sound of breaking glass. Initially, I thought Skylar must have dropped something, but then I heard another crash, and another after that. Annoyed, I stormed around the house, yelling for Skylar. I found her in the foyer, standing on a ladder right by the chandelier, replacing its many bulbs. She had assumed the crashing sound was from me fumbling around with something. As we talked, I heard the sound again, coming from the kitchen. I ran there and saw the boxes tossed around, and standing over the broken glass and ceramic, it was that kid with his ugly mole. I clenched down hard and ground my teeth. I felt the heat rise up to my face, and I yelled at him, "Stop right there, you little freak!" I kicked the boxes away, ignored the broken shards of plates and cups. I walked straight to him, my hands reaching out, reaching for that fat little neck of his. That's when the boy hawked back and launched a glob of spit right onto my forehead. It dripped down to my nose, and then started to trickle by my mouth. I wiped the vulgar substance clean off, staining my gray crew sweater sleeve. Upon wiping it, a putrid smell became apparent. His mouth must be rotten. The stench was something else. And that kid, he just smiled at me and broke another plate. For a moment, just a moment, I lost myself. And I admit, I yelled something that will sound a bit grotesque to you. "I'm going to kill you, Bruce!" I yelled loud as I could, clearly declaring it. The words did not have my consent to form, but they felt good coming out. They felt therapeutic. I chased after him, and in my rage, I stormed right through the boxes labeled fragile, knocking over lamps and photo frames, and right in the foyer, right under the chandelier, the ladder. The ladder Skylar was standing on came crashing down, and with it, she fell and landed on her ankle. It snapped, bone splintered, and with it, blood came pouring out. She screamed and wailed, crying and confused, and when she finally regained some composure, she asked me what happened. "The kid," I told her. "That Bruce look-alike kid. He broke our dishes, spat at me, so I chased him. He was running away from me. I almost got him, but I didn't see the ladder." She held her ankle, tears pouring down her face. She just stared at me for a moment before asking, "What is wrong with you?" I drove her to the hospital. It was a quiet ride. The doctors checked her out and assured me it would heal, but would require months of physical therapy. I felt like a complete jerk. I did. I don't know why I said what I said, but in the moment it felt like the right thing to say to her, as if it would give her comfort. I told her, "That kid is going to pay for this." I swore that I would take every dollar from him and his dad, swore that they would be starving on the streets by the time I was done with them. After I said that, Skylar called her sister to pick her up. Said she was going to stay with her for a bit. I was emotional. Before I left, I said some more things I certainly regret. But I was mad, so mad. I couldn't help but picture that smirk that Bruce's look-alike had on his face as he broke my dishes in my house. On my way home, I stopped by Tony's place, a little apartment in Stafford. He and Carson were already deep into a case of beer. I told them everything. Again, Carson was being weird about the whole thing. His face was pale white. He made some dumb excuse to bail on us. Tony, on the other hand, Tony was a good friend about it. Heard me out. Agreed that we needed to teach that kid a lesson. There are some soft people today, overprotective people, thinking that kids can get away with anything, not have to face the consequences. We were going to correct that. When we got to my house, the whole neighborhood was dark. I turned on every light inside to let that little freak know I was home and waiting for him. I even left the door cracked open to invite him in. Tony and I stayed up and indulged in a few glasses of JMO, waiting for the boys' inevitable visit. As we sat, as we drank, Tony got to talking. It's weird, right? The kid. I mean, the kid looks exactly like Bruce. That ugly mole has to be genetic, right? Did some girly hop on top of old veggie Bruce? His question made my head hurt. I do not like to think too much about how Bruce spends his days. Hope so. Never thought about all the stuff Bruce doesn't get to do because of that day. Tony laughed at that. Really, man? Because, I think about that a lot. It totally wasn't our fault or anything, but I still feel bad about it. Well, I think about my wife in the hospital. I think about this Bruce Jr. character breaking into my house and destroying my stuff. Tony spoke under his breath. Maybe it's Bruce Jr.'s house. That upset me. What did you say? This is my house. My father bought it with our family's hard-earned money. I'm just saying, let's say it is Bruce's kid. Or maybe a nephew from an equally ugly cousin. Maybe they feel entitled to it. Maybe they think they can just make the rich kid leave. 1, I am not a kid. 2, I am not rich. My father hardly gives me anything, just necessities. He's never given me anything cool or exotic, like a sports car or a sick watch, just basics. Tony laughed at that. Yeah, basics. Just, a Lexus, a 3-bedroom house, just because you got married to Skylar. Where did you two meet again? Oh yeah, she works at your dad's company. Was she another necessity for you, Victor? I felt my fingers clawing into the leather armrests of the chair. I was about to knock some respect into Tony when we heard footsteps come in from the foyer. You still game? I asked Tony as we looked towards the foyer. Or do you still feel bad about Bruce? Nah, just give me your Lexus. That'll ease my conscience. When we got to the foyer, the front door was wide open. We looked above us and saw Bruce's look-alike staring down from the balcony. He began to spit at us, and we both shouted at him. You're trapped here. The quicker you give up, the quicker your punishment can be over. I warned the kid, fully ready to give him the proper discipline his father should have. He laughed at that, but his laugh, it was odd, labored and clogged, congested, as if air wasn't getting through. That sound, that guttural sound, angered me, enraged me. It felt accusatory. As Tony guarded the door, I ran up the stairs. The lights went out, and again I heard a crash, this time a loud one, followed by a thud. I looked down the stairs, but in the dark I could not see anything. Tony! I yelled, and heard glass crinkle and metal drag on the tile floor. The chandelier. The lights flickered back on, just for a moment, just long enough for me to see the blood dripping from Tony's head as he clawed at the front door, trying to escape the fallen chandelier. I called Tony's name, but he just wheezed back at me. The sight of him, the sound he made, I lost it. I know, some guy's instincts, right? Call an ambulance? That's flight, and I am all fight. I was going to hammer that kid in for what he did to Tony. I ran up the stairs and started to search every room. I crawled on my hands and knees to search through closets, boxes, under the bed, all in the dark. My eyes were slowly adjusting. I started to see shapes more clearly. I was screaming out for that creepy kid. Bruce! I am going to kill you when I get my hands on you. As soon as I said that, another glob of spit landed straight on my face. I saw him back out in the hallway, and I ran towards him, chased his raspy, guttural breaths down the staircase and through the foyer. I was so close behind him. I reached for his shirt. I reached for his neck so I could strangle him. I was just a few inches away from him when he jumped out the door. I chased after him, hurtling carelessly outside onto the porch, but my foot had gotten caught on something outside. Tony. He must have managed to crawl out from under the chandelier, and just made it outside to the porch before he collapsed. I didn't see his unconscious body in time. I fell hard, head first down the concrete steps of the porch. I felt my neck plunge inwards to my body, felt my neck crank coarsely well past its bend. As I laid on the ground, I saw my blood spill and pool on my cheek, and then I felt nothing. Nothing at all. As I faded out, I saw him. I saw Bruce. He smiled and spat right down on me as I laid there helplessly, just like I did to him all those years ago. Eventually, the neighbors found me and Tony laid out in our own blood. They called the police, medics, and they took us. Weeks passed. When I was finally in a condition where I could communicate with the police, they found no trace of the boy we described or his father. They verified that Bruce had actually died a few months after the original accident. My father never told me. Carson, Tony, and I just thought he had been living out his days in some hospital bed. His father did not stay around long after that. Unable to move on, he followed his son. As I told my story, I heard a tone in the officers I was communicating with. They thought Tony and I were insane, haunted by guilt. I advised them that Skylar saw the kid too. The police were sure to point out she only saw him once, at night, while she'd been drinking, that only Tony and I saw him again. Tony, the lucky jerk. He only suffered a concussion and a broken shoulder from the chandelier, and guess who he sued for the damage? Yours truly. But the courts were a little sympathetic towards me. Only had to cover his medical bills. No pain and suffering. You see, I write to you this agonizing plea to be believed by someone, anyone, using OptiKey, a device that allows you to use a computer through optic tracking only, meaning just your eye movement, as my fall was not as forgiving as Tony's. I am fully paralyzed from the neck down, and even my voice doesn't work anymore. Or as the doctor put it, I fell just right. Every day I sit in my house. The nurses my father hired to care for me keep me in the first floor office, where I overlook the porch, that cursed step. And at night, every night, when all the help leaves for the day, Bruce and his dad come back. First, I hear them playing. Catch, board games, whatnot. I hear them cooking and laughing. And when Bruce's dad retires for the night, when their sweet ceremony of living together in the afterlife ends, eventually Bruce comes to pay me a visit. He plays his games with me as well. He drags his nails across my face. He plunges his thumbs into my eyes. He takes a knife to my gums and yanks, plies pieces of me away. He puts bugs and rats in my mouth. Through his gnarled breathing, I can hear his twisted taunts. He mocks the life I lost, and the life he says I took. But when I wake up, there is no physical proof of the night's horrors. My father hardly visits. Skylar left me. The details of Tony's plan disturbed her. So you said you were looking for stories of the unprovable. Well, please believe me. Please get me out of this house. I cannot take it another night.
Thank you for listening to tonight's tale. If you ask me, Victor got just what he deserved. He might have been done with his past, but his past was not done with him. It has been a while since I heard from Victor, but I can't imagine much has changed for him. Please subscribe if you wish to hear more stories, as we have many, many records to get through. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the story, or an angry comment if you hated it. Has something unexplainable ever happened to you? Please leave a comment and perhaps we will be in touch.